Welcome to Family History Mysteries, a podcast that tells the stories uncovered through family history research, the unexpected stories of everyday people. I am an avid family historian who has been compiling my family tree for over 15 years, with nearly 20,000 people recorded in my trees. And please put a review on my podcast. That will certainly help in getting the word out there and creating more listenership. Shorts episode 31. Andrew Stenhouse. Andrew Stenhouse was born in 1836 at Barony, Lanarkshire, Scotland, to Andrew Stenhouse and Catherine Russell. His father was a carpenter, and Andrew was the youngest of 4 children, and one brother emigrated to New Zealand. In 1861 he was a sawmill manager and living with his father. His father died in May 1857. Andrew arrived in Melbourne on the 15th of September 1862 when he was 25 aboard the vessel Bruce. He then immigrated to New Zealand, where he married Maria Matilda Shields, née Barrett, who was from Middlesex, England, on the 22nd of February 1872 at Hokitika, Westland, in the west coast of New Zealand, when they were 36. They were married at the residence of A.F.F. Etheridge, Esquire. Andrew is listed as a contractor. In January 1857, Mary was a 23-year-old housemaid when she immigrated to Tasmania. A £16 bounty was paid by John Barrett. Travelling with her was a 25-year-old labourer, Edward Barrett, who may have been John Barrett's brother. They travelled as singles aboard the vessel the Great Tasmania. Mary married Robert Shields, a farmer, on the 29th of February 1860 at East Tamar near Launceston, Tasmania, and they had 2 sons, George William in 1861 in Launceston and James in 1863. Some records state that Robert died in 1867, quite likely in New Zealand, as they had a daughter, Robertina Mary Shields, in New Zealand. After Mary and Andrew married, they had a son, Andrew Stenhouse III, on the 15th of August 1873 at Caney, Westland, on the west coast of New Zealand, and by 1900 they were living in Victoria at their home, Willyama in St Kilda. On the 24th of December 1904, in the Broken Hill Barrier Miner. The Globe Timber Mills. The Globe Timber Mills, of which Mr. Andrew Stenhouse is the proprietor, constitute one of the finest examples of a successfully conducted industry in Broken Hill. It is now just on 18 years ago that the business was started in a modest way. The timber is imported direct from Puget Sound, and only a short while ago the largest cargo of timber ever landed in Port Pirie and was consigned to the Globe Timber Mills. Mr. Stenhouse is enthusiastic in his business, and it is in a great measure owing to his own ingenuity that many labour-saving and convenient appliances are in existence at the works. The total number of men employed in the mill is 60. The Globe Mills occupy a front position amongst barrier industries. And on the 24th of November 1906 in the Barrier Miner at Broken Hill, in celebration of his 70th birthday, the popular proprietor of the Broken Hill Globe Timber Mills, Mr. Andrew Stenhouse, tendered the whole of his employees a picnic at McCulloch Park on Saturday. A special train was chartered for the 250 employees and their friends, which left Broken Hill bound for the well-known holiday resort. A good program of sports was run off and all kinds of games were indulged in. There was a large pavilion and the weather was very pleasant throughout the day, and after spending a most enjoyable time, a return was made to the city at 6 o'clock. On the 4th of December 1908 in the Broken Hill Barrier Miner, birthday felicitations, Mr. Andrew Stenhouse honoured. A few of the oldest and most intimate friends of Mr. Andrew Stenhouse discovered that yesterday was the 72nd anniversary of that popular citizen's birthday, and they deemed the occasion a fitting one for a mild amount of jubilation. Accordingly, a little surprise birthday party was arranged with 15 old friends. Mr. Stenhouse assembled in the dining room of the Crown Hotel, and over glasses of wine, Mr. Stenhouse was congratulated. Mr. Edwards spoke of him in glowing terms, saying he was a true, upright and honourable man, and one of the best men. And the chairman, on behalf of the old friends, presented a beautiful silver salad bowl for Mr. Stenhouse. In replying to the congratulations which were showered upon him, Mr. Stenhouse, with great difficulty, controlled his feelings. The evening was concluded by a visit to the All-Star performance at the Crystal Theatre. In the following year, on the 20th of August 1909, Andrew's wife Mary passed away. In the Barrier Miner, it said that the sad news reached Broken Hill this morning of the death of Mrs Stenhouse, wife of Mr Andrew Stenhouse, which occurred at their home Willyama in Beaconsfield Parade, St Kilda. This was the more unexpected, as only on the previous afternoon the doctors had given it as their opinion that the patient was very much out of danger. Very widespread sympathy will be felt for Mr Stenhouse and his loss. The deceased is an old resident of the Barrier, arriving here in 1889. For the past 2 years he's lived in St Kilda, and for many years Mrs Stenhouse was afflicted with the loss of her eyesight, and her only means of getting about was to be driven by a companion. She's been ailing for a considerable time with lung trouble. The deceased leaves 2 sons, Mr G. W. Shields of the Melbourne Stock Exchange and Mr J. Shields of Broken Hill. She was 72 years of age. From 1906, the St Kilda foreshore was gradually landscaped and beautified with lawns, trees, shrubberies and facilities. Andrew, who lived at 362 Beaconsfield Parade, which was a large house facing the gardens, donated funds to the St Kilda City Council for a statue of Captain Cook. It commemorates Cook's voyage, the first time Europeans arrived at the east coast of Australia. The statue was unveiled on the 7th of September 1914. The rear of the plinth lists the crew of that voyage. It was originally located in the main Catani Gardens. Since 2018, the statue has been physically targeted on dates near Australia Day in late January. It was graffitied with the words "No Pride," and an Aboriginal Australian flag was placed next to the statue. In 2022, the statue was covered with red paint. On the 24th of January 2024, on the eve of Australia Day, the statue was cut down at its ankles from the plinth in an act of vandalism. The words "The colony will fall" were written on the plinth of the statue. Following a fiery debate, the council voted to repair and reinstate the statue. Andrew Stenhouse died at his residence Willyama at St Kilda on the 6th of August 1918 at the age of 82. The North Western Advocate and Emu Bay Times in Tasmania placed an announcement of his death. The death occurred in Melbourne on Tuesday of Mr Andrew Stenhouse, a cousin of the principal of the local firm of Stenhouse and Company, Mr F.A. Stenhouse. The deceased, who visited Devonport a short time ago and was well known to many people here, had reached his 80th year. For some time past his health has not been good, and he underwent an amputation of a leg, which did not have the desired effect. For many years he was in the timber industry, founding the Globe Timber Company, in which he retained an interest to the end. Much towards building up Broken Hill was done by Mr Stenhouse, who during the past few years resided at St Kilda. He presented to the City of Melbourne a costly statue of Captain Cook, which graces the St Kilda front and is much admired. And on the 10th of August 1918 in the Prahran Telegraph, "In Memoriam, the late Andrew Stenhouse." We deeply regret to record the death of Mr Andrew Stenhouse, which took place at his residence Willyama. He had endeared himself by his kindly and courteous nature and his many gifts for the beautification of the foreshore. In days gone by, he was a contractor in a large way in New Zealand and was responsible for the erection of the spire of the Christchurch Cathedral. He was later on a resident of Broken Hill and largely interested in business both in South Australia and Victoria, but in later years made his home in St Kilda and in a quiet, unostentatious way showed his appreciation of the work of the Foreshore Trust by contributing to the funds for seating accommodation under the pines by the side of Shakespeare Grove, erecting life-saving kiosks at West Beach and Marine Parade, and other improvements, but his chief contribution to the beach was a bronze statue of Captain Cook, which he supplemented with bronze castings for the base of the statue containing the names of officers and ship's company of the Endeavour. Mr Stenhouse's interment occurred at the St Kilda Cemetery on Thursday afternoon and was attended by a large number of sincere mourners. And in the Adelaide Mail on the 10th of August 1918, Broken Hill lost one of its best citizens when Mr Andrew Stenhouse died in St Kilda, Melbourne. Mr Stenhouse has been associated with the city from its infancy. He materially helped to build it practically and by medium of his purse. Shortly after he arrived from New Zealand, where he was a very important lumberman, he took over Globe Timber Mills and by degrees made them among the most up-to-date in Australia. He became a big importer of timber and soon supplied all the mines with the wood necessary for securing underground and surface works. He watched and helped the city grow, and as it grew, his mills grew. It was not long before the chief concerns in Broken Hill were the mines, the Silverton Tramway and the Globe Mills. Age finally told, and several years ago, He formed his business into a company. He remained a director but took little part in the management, though he came regularly. As the city developed, Mr Stenhouse became interested in many enterprises. He was always willing to assist prospectors who had a good show. Mr Stenhouse was probably the last of the crowd of the prominent men who helped pioneer Broken Hill. His generosity was unbounded and few knew its extent. He was a Scotchman of the broadest kind who had no enemies and many friends. He was 81 and a half at the age of his death. His wife died about 10 years ago. His only son died in 1896. And on the 24th of December 1918 in the Broken Hill Barrier Miner, the Union Trustee Company of Australia Limited and Mr Alexander Fife Stenhouse are applying for a grant of probate for the will of Andrew Stenhouse, late of St Kilda, who died on the 6th of August. The Victorian estate is valued at £107,766, comprising of realty of £23,000 and personalty of £84,759, and it goes to relatives and friends, subject to bequests of £50 each to the Presbyterian Church of Broken Hill, the Presbyterian Church of St Kilda, the YMCA of St Kilda and St Thomas's Hospital in London. There are also additional assets in New South Wales and South Australia. On the 5th of June 1941 in the Urella Times in New South Wales, Hidden Gold Legend of House with Dungeon. A legend of 2,000 hidden gold sovereigns persists about a strange old home in Beaconsfield Parade, St Kilda in Victoria, which is to be offered for sale at the end of this month. Although every wall has been tapped from skirting board to ceiling, every nook and cranny probed and furniture searched, the sovereigns have never been found. Then there is a mysterious dungeon without a door built amongst the sturdy foundations. The only entrance to this subterranean room is a small glassed window at ground level through which a big man could not crawl. When the present owner bought the house in 1923, the window was bolted on the inside. Not long ago, a painter, after forcing the window, wriggled into the dungeon. He found none of the iron rings or shackles he had half expected, only a dark empty room in one wall of which there was a heavy arched doorway leading apparently to nowhere. The door is built in an outward-facing wall of the room, beyond which, it seems, there must be only solid ground. The sovereigns are said to have been hidden away in the last war by the builder of the house, Mr Andrew Stenhouse, an identity in St Kilda in those days. He was a very big man, once a sailor, rumour says, and later a manager of a timber mill at Broken Hill. He lost a leg in an accident, and he had a lift built between the ground and first floors. Stenhouse was born in Glasgow, Scotland, more than 100 years ago and died soon after the last war. Living in the house would be as good as a tonic. One feels there's a temptation to poke into some corner of a sturdy dressing table, tap at a skirting board, or wonder about a slightly loose slab of marble in one of the solid, old-fashioned mantelpieces. The 15-roomed house has been built like a fortress. Between the sturdy foundations and short brick pillars supporting the floors, eerie, arched passageways interlink beneath all the rooms, but one of them penetrates to the mystery room. So firstly, a little on Mary's children. George William Shields was born in 1861 in Launceston, Tasmania, and he married Agnes McAlpine Peyton on the 30th of December 1889 in South Yarra, Victoria, when he was 28 and Agnes 23. They had two sons, William in 1890 and Rupert in 1892. Agnes had married Arthur Cunningham Tellis Tibbets on the 18th of June 1874 when she was 18 and Arthur 27. They had 4 children, and within 4 months of their marriage had moved to Brisbane. By 1883 they moved to New Zealand, but Arthur died in Dunedin in 1887. Agnes sailed from Christchurch, New Zealand to Melbourne, arriving there on the 24th of March 1887. In 1891, George and Agnes were living at Moonee Ponds, and by 1910 were living at St Kilda. George died on the 17th of October 1929 at Lindale in Ackland Street, St Kilda. And it says he was a loving father of Rupert, Robert, and stepfather of Arthur, Cora, and Ida. And he was 68. On the 18th of October 1929 in the Melbourne Argus. Many businessmen will regret to learn of the death of Mr George William Shields, which occurred suddenly at his home in St Kilda yesterday after an illness of only 2 days. He was a member of the Stock Exchange for 21 years and retired only a year ago. He was also a member of the Victorian Racing Club, the Stock Exchange Club and the Royal Automobile Club of Victoria.
The late Mr. Shields was the stepson of the late Mr. A. Stenhouse and for many years was employed at the Globe Mills in Broken Hill. And on the 29th of March 1930 in the Melbourne Age, George William Shields, formerly of Park Street but later of Ackland Street, St Kilda, sharebroker and accountant, who died on the 17th of October, left by will, dated on the 14th of January 1923, real estate valued at £951 and personal property valued at £2,776 to his widow. The second child of Mary Shields was James, who was born on the 1st of January 1863 in Launceston. He married Ella Mary Campbell in Broken Hill in 1904 when he was 41. They had 2 children, Norman in 1905 and Margaret in 1910. And he died on the 24th of July 1941 in a private hospital, and he was 79. The third child of Mary's was Robertina Mary Shields, who was born in 1867 in New Zealand. She died on the 11th of April 1893 in Reedon Street, St Kilda. She didn't marry, and it states in her death notice she was the only stepdaughter of Andrew Stenhouse of Broken Hill, late of Auckland, New Zealand. She was only 25 when she died. And Andrew and Mary's son, Andrew III, who was born in 1874. He died on the 3rd of February 1896 in Glenelg, South Australia. On the 4th of February 1896 in the Broken Hill Barrier Miner, it announced his death. Mr. J.V. Sadler this morning received a wire from Mr. A. Stenhouse of Adelaide stating that his son Andrew passed away peacefully last night at Glenelg. The body's been conveyed by today's express to Melbourne to be interred at St Kilda Cemetery. The intelligence will be received with great regret here, where the deceased had many friends. He was an athletic young fellow, and when he left Broken Hill recently on a holiday tour, he appeared to be in the best of health. Deep sympathy will be felt for Mr. and Mrs. Stenhouse, who've had many troubles to bear lately. He was only 22. So all these years later, the house is still standing, but I have not seen any articles outlining that they have found a booty of sovereigns in that home. So who knows, it still could be there.
If you are interested in sharing your story on my podcast, Family History Mysteries, please go to my Facebook page and send me a message. If you would like some assistance in filling in the gaps in your family tree to see what mysteries you solve, please get in touch. And don't forget, you can have early access to episodes by subscribing, and you'll also gain access to bonus episodes.